I'm 58 years old, and as early as I can remember, I've heard ominous warnings about the usurpation of powers by the civil government and a corresponding loss of liberty. Of course, that pace of the loss of liberty and the increase in the power of government has only accelerated since I was young. You don't have to be half my age to have observed this for yourself. I don't, however, believe this is a phenomenon of the past 4 years, as some would say. It's been a constant process that really began even before I was born and still continues. Much of our feeling of helplessness is that we don't believe we can control government. But this really betrays our own statist view of government. When we talk about government, we're usually referring to the state. The word govern really comes from a Greek word that referred to controlling a ship. So our modern idiom, the ship of state, is a very appropriate one. To govern is thus to control, and a ship is a good figure because controlling a large sailing ship was not an easy task. It took skill, it took work. It's learned by discipline and hard work. So how is government or control exercised in Scripture? If you notice, the Ten Commandments are addressed to individuals, though the case laws, which were applications, were sometimes addressed to the authorities as to how they would implement them if someone was brought before them. But basically, biblical law is addressed to individuals. The basic responsibility for government, for control in Scripture, is thus self-government, or we might say self-control. Then the family was the next level of government. Parents steer or pilot or control children by their instruction and guidance. Scripture tells the parents, train up a child in the way that he should go. We know that this is a family responsibility. Since character is formed in youth, our basic government is formed in us in our families. So it's an obvious conclusion that the family is the most important institution of a society. And this doesn't, by the way, detract from the importance of the church, but without the family, all our churches would basically be rescue missions. So the family is given power in Scripture. The family is given the power over children and their training. The family is given power over property and inheritance. Property was family-owned, and farms outside the cities could not be transferred because it was held in trust for future generations. All you could really do was lease the property for 50 years, and in the year of Jubilee, it had to return to the family. We've mentioned education. Well, likewise, the welfare, the care of the elderly, and the widows was a responsibility of the family. And another important power given to the family was the perpetuation of the faith. So the core powers, the core government of the society was within the family. Now, there are other spheres of government over us. In addition to the church, there's the school, there's our vocations, there's even manners that govern us. We err when we think of government merely as civil government. When we do so, we have in our own minds established a rationale behind statism. If government is basically civil government, then we need a powerful state. We need to get back to the idea of self-government and multiple forms of government. We have made great strides from the late 20th centuries to the present in returning control of education to the family. We've also made strides in emphasizing multi-generational family faithfulness. The cost of doing this has been very, very high. Particularly private schools are sometimes prohibitive because of the cost of funding them, the cost of tuition. Even the cost of home education is sometimes hidden because it does consume a tremendous amount of energy and resources within the family. We can never get back to a completely biblical model until we finance our endeavors biblically. The tithe was God's tax. The tithe was God's means of financing His kingdom. 90% of the tithe went to the Levites. People assume it went to the priests in the temple. That's not really true. The tithe was given to the Levites, and then the Levites gave a tenth of the tithe to the priests for their work in the temple, because there was only one tabernacle or one temple, and a relatively small number of priests needed to man it at any given time. It was the Levites. These were people who were not eligible to be increased, that took care of things like education and the training of future leaders in the world. They took care of things like education in particular areas like music. They would have taken care of many of the social functions that we now comprehend under education and charity, though a lot of charity was directly given by the giver as the poor tithe, and as well the gleaning took care of many of the needs of the poor. So there were various means whereby these social needs were taken care of in God's law, even as late as the modern era. Tithe agencies took care of most charity work. It was common for immigrants to this country to be given aid and assistance, education, training, and so forth in life in America, even to the extent of telling them how to get onto public transportation, telling them how to cook foods that were unusual to them. It was very often that foreign aid was even a private work. If there was a need, a famine, warfare, if there were people being mistreated anywhere in the world, there were various agencies who collected contributions in this country and forwarded them to these causes. In the early 1800s, when de Tocqueville visited America and wrote about it, he noted all this private charity, and he referred to these groups as voluntary associations. We privately funded, largely through the tithe, our various social necessities. Now we feel backed into a corner. The civil government taxes more than a tithe, but in reality the government is its own greatest recipient of charity. When it doesn't work, it is with an eye to buying votes. I don't know that this can be reversed because it's in no politician's interest to say we are going to spend less. We are going to undo some of the programs that people have depended upon. There's no reason why that would benefit them when it came time to re-election. It would not benefit their party. So I don't know that that is a system that can be changed until it systemically fails. When our system systemically fails, and it will probably happen with collapse of the dollar or the massive mountain of debt we have incurred, then perhaps we can return government to its proper bounds. In the meantime, however, what is our answer to this problem? We can't wait until the government fails. We can't wait till the government goes broke. In the meantime, we have to make ourselves self-governing. We have to make our family government strong. And this we can do regardless of what happens with our government or when. Government then means control. So there's going to be government. The question is, whose government do we live under? If we govern ourselves by God's law, and if we govern our families by God's law, we're charting a course. We are piloting our ship, and we're doing so independently of the humanistic state. Our government can be God's law even today. This is our calling in our personal lives and in our family lives.